Larry, how old were you when you went into the Navy? What was it like during that time?
Well, I was 19 years old and in the prime of my life. And I guess I wanted some adventure, so I joined the Navy. uh, Things was kind of quiet around Carrollton, and you know, I was employed at Banquet Foods, and I knew I was going to be drafted, and I didn't want to go in as an Army person because I knew I'd go to Vietnam and be on the ground fighting, and that's the reason I didn't. I went in the Navy.
Now, you grew up in Carrollton your whole life. What was that experience like going into the Navy boot camp? Where were you positioned? Talk to me a little bit about boot camp.
Well, boot camp's pretty hard. They get you lined out the way they want you. They brainwash you pretty good, and you just go from there. You study books about the Navy, and then you go. When you graduate, you go to your first duty station, and you're pretty well. If you graduate, you know what's going on.
You had extensive training. What was some of the training that you had to go through?
Well, I had the extensive. You mean when I went to Vietnam, or
before
boot camp? Boot camp. It's mostly getting you familiar with the ways of the Navy, the way they operate, and that's about it. And then they want you to be ready for your first duty station and not be a surprise to you wherever they send you. You will know something about what's going on.
Now, you described how it was real cold when you went through some of your boot camp and training, but then you went to Vietnam. What was that like?
Well, I went to train. I had training before I went to Vietnam, and about 3 foot of snow at Woodby Island, and that wasn't no fun. When I went to Vietnam, it could be anywhere from 100 to 110 or 20 on the gunboats that I was on, because I was a 20 millimeter gunner in a turret, and it was hot.
Describe those boats. Describe all the boats that you were on.
Well, there was. You always went out with with a heavy boat that had a 105 Hauser on it, and then you went out. Your first boat would be a minesweeping boat to try to cut the wires and stuff on the mine that the VC had set in the water for you, because they did it quite often. And then you had your ATCs, which was attack troop carriers, where we hauled the troops in, the bow door come down, the troops went off into the jungle. Usually, a lot of times, it was just as soon as you let the bow door down, the fighting started. And that's just the way it was. The thing about the rivers was we lived on them boats. A 7-man crew, Navy, we lived on them. When we went out, we had 500 gallons of fresh water to brush our teeth and bathe 7 people. And a lot of times we run out 2 weeks after we was out, no place to get water. And we had to do just like the Vietnamese. We had to wash our clothes in the river. We had to brush our teeth. We used to try to save water for that. But anyway, it wasn't very good conditions on the rivers. That's why they called us river rats. That's what we was called. River rats, because we lived on the river. And I don't know, we stuck together and fought hard, and that's the reason we all come back.
You also mentioned that you kind of took to the land at times to help fight.
Oh yeah, a lot of times when the fighting was rough and the boys was getting hit hard, we grabbed our M16s because we couldn't fire our weapons out the side when we went in for a landing. The only time we could do it was when we was going up the river and prep the beach, what they call prep the beach, to let the Army off. Well, the VC would hide in the jungle and duck down till we dropped them bow doors and the fight was on. A lot of times we went out, picked up wounded and stuff like that.
Now, there was one day in particular when an incident happened. Can you describe that day?
Well, we was going up the river, and we was next to the last boat in the column, and the VCs set off a 850-pound water mine. Well, they sunk us, and that stopped up the channel where the other boats couldn't turn around. So the fight was on. Called in all the Army black ponies and the helicopters, the gunships to help us, and we ended up getting out of there. It was really rough there for a little bit. They pumped our boat back up where we could at least cripple back to our mothership, and they lifted it out of the water and overhauled it. And then after that, we went back out.
When you talk about your military experience, what kind of feelings come back to you?
Oh, there's no good time in the war. That was my worst part. I was busy all the time working on guns and stuff because that's what my rank was. I was a gunner's mate specialist. Went to school for it, and I worked on a lot of guns. And it was my responsibility to make those guns fire when we was fighting, you know. And I made sure the boys cleaned their guns right, and I ordered new barrels and ammo and stuff like that.
Now, you received some pretty high honors. Can you talk to me about some of the medals that you received?
Well, I was on the Hickman County, and I received Man of the Month, which was quite an honor for the things that I'd done when I was on that ship, knowing how to give out ammunition and stuff, and then I received 11 medals and ribbons when I come back home. That's what I come out with, and one was a Purple Heart, and I got just about everything, just about everything you could receive, but I guess the Medal of Honor while serving in Vietnam.
Now, what year did you come back, and what was it like when you did come back?
Well, I come back in 1970, and it wasn't really, I don't know, the people just didn't like us boys for some reason. It was just a dark time in everybody's life that come back from Vietnam. We never got, well, how you doing, and handshakes and all that. We never got none of that. But we never talked about it. I don't think very many of the veterans that fought hard talk about Vietnam because nobody wanted to hear it. And they really don't want to tell it unless somebody wants to hear it, And a lot of them won't say nothing. I probably said more than a lot of guys would say about it.
Do you think these days it's a little bit different, and maybe you do feel a little more comfortable talking about it with people probably coming up to you in grocery stores saying thank you for your service?
Well, yeah, it's changed. They're getting where they're if you wear, like I wear a military hat most of the time, and people can see I've had a lot of people stop me and thank me, and I really appreciated it. I'd like to got that when I got home, but it didn't happen. So, and that's like this medal that I got up there, Welcome Home Medal. 35 or 40 years later, Missouri gives all their veterans a Welcome Home Medal, which was pretty nice. But that'd been nice to have got when them boys was coming home. But I think everybody feels about like me. They put the war behind them and their experiences. I had some good experience in the service. I had a lot of good schooling, and I learned a lot, and I'm very happy for that. And getting the schooling is the reason I'm back here now. Some of the boys that went over didn't get the schooling. Some of the Army and stuff, Us boys is in the Navies, they pretty well, we knew what was going to happen as soon as we come in country. So I thank the Navy for that, and all the awards and medals I got, I appreciate them.
Now, once you got out, you did have a child that was born while you were in Vietnam. What happened when you got back? Talk to me about life after the war.
Well, just like I said, there was nothing ever said about Vietnam. I went about. I got my job back down at ConAgra, and life just went on. And that's about all I can say. I mean, it was a good experience in some ways. In some ways, it wasn't.
Definitely, the learning experience was something that you'll forever take away.
Anytime a boy from 18 to 19 to 20 goes into service, he's give his youth to his country, and that's pretty good.